My name is Ima. I'm 43 years old, and last month I found out my entire family threw a party for my brother's new baby, but I wasn't invited. Not only that, I learned the truth in the most humiliating way possible, through photos splashed all over social media. What happened next changed everything. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe for more true stories about family drama, betrayal, and courage. I wasn't looking for trouble that evening. Honestly, I was just sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone the way I always did when the day had worn me down. Work had been long, the sink was still full of dishes, and all I wanted was a few quiet minutes to myself. That's when I saw it. The photo that pulled the air right out of my lungs. There they were. My entire family, standing in front of my parents' house, balloons tied to the porch rail, the kind of giant silver letters that spelled out, "Baby boy," and a cake so tall it looked like something from a magazine cover. My brother, Mark, was holding his newborn son with a proud grin plastered on his face. His wife leaned against him, glowing with the kind of happiness I'd never been allowed to display in front of our parents. And the crowd surrounding them? Every relative I could think of. Cousins, neighbors, even old family friends. Everyone except me. At first, I thought maybe it was an old picture. Maybe it was from the hospital, or some earlier celebration. But then I noticed the timestamp. Just 3 hours ago. And the worst part? My own mother stood there in the front row, smiling wider than I'd seen her smile in years, as if this moment had erased every other part of her life. I zoomed in on the screen, my thumb trembling as I tried to absorb the details. The flowers, the little blue tablecloths, the pile of wrapped gifts stacked neatly by the window. There was even a banner stretched across the garage door that read, "Welcome baby Ethan." A lump rose in my throat. They hadn't just forgotten me. They had planned this entire thing behind my back. My daughter, Emily, was in the kitchen finishing homework when she noticed me freeze. "Mom, you okay?" she asked, peeking around the corner. I didn't answer right away. How do you explain something like that to your child without sounding pathetic? I swallowed, forcing my voice to stay calm, but the words cracked anyway. "They had a party," I whispered, holding the phone out toward her. Emily came closer and squinted at the screen. Her eyes widened the moment she recognized the house. "Wait, what? When was this?" "Tonight," I said, my voice flat. She took the phone from me and swiped through the album someone had tagged my brother in. Different angles, group shots, even a short video where everyone sang a cheerful song as Mark cut the cake. The sound filled the living room, echoing in my chest like a cruel reminder. "They didn't even tell you?" Emily's tone sharpened. "No, my throat felt tight. Nobody called. Nobody texted. I didn't even know this was happening." For a moment, Emily just stared, her jaw set, the way she always did when something wasn't right. She wasn't just angry, she was protective. And in that second, her reaction hurt even more than my own heartbreak. Because it meant my daughter could see what I had tried to hide for years. That I wasn't welcome in my own family. I pulled the blanket tighter around me, trying to hide from the sting of humiliation. But the photos wouldn't leave my mind. They played like a slideshow behind my eyes. My mother laughing with Mark's wife. My father holding the baby proudly. Even my aunt, the one who never drove after dark, had shown up. Everyone had been invited, except me. I remembered birthdays growing up where Mark had the bigger cake, the shinier gifts, and the louder cheers. I remembered times when I had asked for help and was told to manage on my own, while Mark received money, cars, and bailouts whenever he stumbled. And here I was again, the invisible one. Only this time, my daughter had a front row seat to my humiliation. Emily sat down next to me, still holding the phone. "Mom, this isn't right." I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "It's just a party," I said, though the words burned coming out. "I don't want to make a big deal out of it." But Emily shook her head. "No, Mom. It's not just a party. They cut you out. They wanted you to feel small." I wanted to argue, to protect her from the truth, but she was right. I could feel it deep in my bones. This wasn't an accident. This was intentional. That night, long after Emily went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with my phone in front of me, the glow of the screen reflecting off the half-empty coffee cup I hadn't bothered to clear away. I scrolled through the comments under the photos, each one like a tiny jab to the heart. Beautiful family. So happy for you guys. Can't wait to meet baby Ethan. I typed out a reply more than once. Something simple like wish I'd been there. But I deleted it every time. I couldn't bring myself to let the world see how excluded I was. Instead, I opened a blank message to my mother. I stared at the screen, my thumbs hovering, ready to ask why. But again nothing came out. Because deep down, I already knew the answer. When Emily came downstairs for a glass of water, she caught me sitting there, still staring at the screen. She didn't say anything, just put her hand on my shoulder. That small gesture meant more than any words. I looked at her and finally admitted, I don't think they want me around anymore. Her expression hardened. Then they don't deserve you. And just like that, the photo that had crushed me also lit something else, a quiet fire inside Emily that I didn't yet recognize. At the time, I thought it was just anger on my behalf. I didn't know it would be the start of something much bigger. Emily's words lingered in the silence of the kitchen long after she padded back upstairs. Then they don't deserve you. I sat there with my phone still glowing on the table, but the pictures from the baby shower had blurred into nothing more than colored lights. My daughter's conviction stung in a different way than the party itself. Because she was right. She could see something I had spent years trying to deny, or excuse, or dress up as, just the way my family is. The truth was, I had always been second. Second in attention, second in affection, second in importance. I leaned back in the chair, pressing the heels of my palms against my eyes, and the memories came uninvited. They didn't come as neat stories. They came as flashes. Childhood flashbacks. I was 8 years old again, sitting on the front porch with a plain cupcake in my lap. My brother Mark was inside with 15 kids, tearing through a pile of presents at his birthday party. His cake had been a 2-tiered masterpiece, frosted with superheroes and topped with sparklers. Mine, just 2 months earlier, had been a box mixed with sprinkles and a candle stuck in sideways. My mother had shrugged when I asked about decorations. Girls don't need all that fuss, she had said, already planning Mark's party. That was the pattern. When I scored an A in math, my father nodded distractedly and asked if I could help Mark catch up in history. When I made the softball team, my parents couldn't come to a single game because Mark had soccer practice. He always seemed to need more, and they always seemed ready to give it. Teenage years. By the time I was in high school, I had stopped expecting much. When I won a writing contest and was supposed to read my essay at the state fair, my mother told me she couldn't make it. Mark's got his championship game that night, honey. You'll understand. I did understand. I understood that my achievements would always be weighed against his, and mine would never tip the scale. The night of that game, I stood in front of an empty folding chair reserved for parents, my voice trembling as I read to a room full of strangers. Afterward, a teacher clapped me on the shoulder and said, "You must make your mom and dad so proud." I smiled politely, knowing they had no idea what I'd written. Early adulthood. Even as an adult, the second-place pattern never broke. When I married Emily's father, my parents barely acknowledged the wedding. They told me they couldn't contribute much financially, because they were helping Mark with the down payment on his house. When Emily was born, my mother brought a small bag of hand-me-down baby clothes from a neighbor. But when Mark's first child arrived, the family threw a massive party at a rented hall, complete with catered food and custom decorations. The double standard wasn't just visible, it was blinding. And yet, I stayed quiet. I told myself it wasn't worth the fight. Present-day reflection. Sitting in the kitchen that night, staring at the blank message I couldn't send to my mother, I realized just how much I had let slide. Every small slight had stacked on top of the next until the weight of them pressed down like a mountain on my chest. And now Emily had witnessed the latest one. That was the part that hurt the most. I could take my own pain. I had been taking it for decades. But watching my daughter see me diminished, overlooked, erased, that was unbearable. A phone call from the past. As if the universe wanted to twist the knife, my phone buzzed just then. It was a text from my cousin Jenna. "Hey, sorry you couldn't make it tonight. It was so nice. Baby Ethan is precious." No question. No acknowledgement. Just the assumption that I had chosen not to show up. I typed back slowly. I wasn't invited. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, her reply came. Oh, I thought maybe you were busy. I don't know why they. She didn't finish the thought. She didn't have to. Emily confronts the truth. The next morning, Emily came downstairs while I was nursing a cup of coffee that had already gone cold. She slid into the chair across from me, her hair messy, her face serious. Mom, she said, was it always like this? With Grandma and Grandpa? I hesitated, but there was no point in lying. Yes. For as long as I can remember. Her brows knit together. Why? I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the question was so simple and yet impossible. I don't know. Mark was just the favorite. He always was. Emily shook her head. That's not fair. No, I said quietly. It's not. We sat there in silence, the weight of years pressing between us. For me, it was a lifetime of being second. For her, it was the realization that her mother, the person she saw as strong, steady, reliable, had been treated like she didn't matter. A twist of memory. Later that afternoon, as I folded laundry, another memory surfaced. One I hadn't thought about in years. I was 22, working 2 jobs to cover rent. Mark had crashed his car, and my parents came to me, asking if I could help with the loan payments until he got back on his feet. I did. For 6 months, I picked up extra shifts, skipped dinners out, wore the same winter coat until the sleeves frayed. Mark never thanked me. My parents never repaid me. And when I finally told them I couldn't keep helping, my mother sighed as if I had failed some invisible test. Family takes care of each other, she had said. I dropped a towel into the basket and pressed my lips together. Family, it seemed, only worked one way. An unexpected visitor. That evening, just as I was starting to make dinner, there was a knock at the door. It was Jenna, my cousin. She looked awkward, shifting from foot to foot, holding a small bag with a onesie inside. I felt weird after our texts last night, she said. I don't know why they didn't invite you. I wanted to stop by. I invited her in, though my chest tightened with a mix of gratitude and embarrassment. She sat at the table, the same one where Emily had comforted me. It was like you didn't exist, Jenna admitted softly. Your mom acted like everything was perfect. Nobody mentioned you. The words hit harder than I expected. Not only had I been excluded, I had been erased. Closing of the section. After Jenna left, I stood in the quiet kitchen again. The walls of this house had absorbed more of my tears than anyone would ever know. And yet, as I wiped my eyes, Emily appeared in the doorway, watching me closely. She didn't say anything this time. She didn't need to. Her presence was enough to remind me that while I had spent my life being second in my parents' eyes, I was first in hers. That thought kept me upright. But it also sharpened something inside me, a thought I had never dared before. If my parents would never give me the respect I deserved, maybe it was time to stop asking for it. If my parents would never give me the respect I deserved, maybe it was time to stop asking for it. That thought should have given me peace. But instead, it left a hollow ache, the kind you feel when you realize a door you've been knocking on for years was never locked. It was simply never meant to open for you. I stood at the sink, rinsing a plate that didn't need rinsing, staring out the window at the quiet street. My phone sat on the counter, face down, buzzing occasionally with notifications I didn't want to check. I knew what they were. More pictures, more posts, more smiling faces from a celebration that wasn't mine to attend. I told myself not to look. But temptation has a way of disguising itself as closure. The first glimpse. When I finally picked up the phone, my thumb hovered over the screen for a long moment before I unlocked it. Facebook was the first app that opened, muscle memory, not intention. And there it was. A live video, posted by one of my cousins. Music thumped faintly through the speaker, muffled by laughter and the hum of conversation. The camera panned across a hall decorated with pastel balloons and twinkling fairy lights. A banner stretched across the wall. Welcome baby Ethan. I froze. Every detail screamed effort. The kind of effort my parents had never once made for me, or for Emily. White tablecloths, gold-trimmed plates, platters stacked high with catered food. A hired photographer moved from table to table, coaxing smiles out of children clutching goodie bags. And then the camera steadied, capturing my parents. My mother in a soft lavender dress, beaming as she held her grandchild. My father, raising a glass in a toast. Both of them glowing with the kind of pride I had craved my whole life. My throat tightened. They looked complete. As though nothing was missing. As though I had never existed. Emily walks in. "Mom." Emily's voice jolted me back. I fumbled, nearly dropping the phone. She was standing in the doorway, hair still tousled from her nap, her eyes flicking curiously toward the device in my hand. I turned the screen face down again. "Nothing, sweetheart. Just scrolling." But she wasn't fooled. She never was. "Is that the party?" she asked softly. Her words cut sharper than the video itself. I didn't answer. My silence was enough. Emily walked closer, her brows drawn tight. "Can I see?" I hesitated. Showing her felt like inviting her into the wound, like letting her touch something raw that might scar her too. But she was 16 now. Old enough to recognize truths I had hidden from her for too long. So I handed her the phone. She watched for less than a minute before she shoved it back into my palm. Her jaw was set, her eyes wet but blazing. "They didn't even mention you," she said. I swallowed hard. "I know. The invisible guest." Later that evening, curiosity gnawed at me again. Against my better judgment, I scrolled through the photos people had tagged. Every smile, every hug, every detail felt like a performance staged to underline my absence. There was Mark's wife, radiant in a fitted gown, standing in front of a 3-tiered cake shaped like building blocks. There was my mother arm in arm with guests, her joy captured in frozen frames. There were long tables lined with family members I hadn't seen in years, all of them gathered under one roof, none of them asking where I was. I paused on one particular photo. My parents, standing behind Mark's family, hands resting proudly on their shoulders. A perfect portrait. Except I wasn't in it. Emily wasn't in it. We had been erased so cleanly it was as if we had never belonged. My chest ached, but beneath the ache was something else. Anger. Not the quiet, numbing kind I had carried for years, but a sharp, rising flame that refused to be smothered. A memory triggered. As I stared at those pictures, another memory crashed through me. Years ago, Emily had begged for a princess-themed birthday. I had scrimped and saved to buy her a small cake shaped like a castle. My parents had promised to come, but at the last minute, they called to say Mark needed help fixing his car. Emily had blown out her candles with a brave smile, pretending not to notice their empty chairs. After the guests left, she had crawled into my lap and whispered, "Maybe they'll come next year." I had kissed her forehead and promised they would. But they never did. And now, watching her face as she scrolled through images of the baby shower, I realized she had stopped waiting, just as I had. Emily speaks out. The next morning, over breakfast, Emily finally broke the silence. "You should say something," she said, her voice firm. I looked up from my untouched toast. "To who?" "To them. Grandma. Grandpa. Uncle Mark. Anyone." I shook my head. "It wouldn't matter." "It would matter to me," she said quietly. "Because right now, it feels like they get to decide your worth. And you're letting them." Her words landed like stones. She wasn't just defending me, she was asking me to defend myself. An accidental confrontation. That afternoon, I drove to the grocery store. I should have gone to another market, but habit pulled me to the one closest to home. And there, by the produce section, I saw them. My parents. They were chatting animatedly with another couple, laughing about how the party turned out better than expected. My mother's eyes sparkled, my father's chest puffed with pride. I froze by the apples, clutching a basket, torn between running and standing tall. Before I could decide, my mother spotted me. Her smile faltered. She said, her voice cautious. The couple excused themselves, leaving us in an awkward triangle of silence. "You weren't at the shower," my father said finally, as though I had forgotten to RSVP. The absurdity of it nearly made me laugh. "I wasn't invited," I replied evenly. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. My father cleared his throat. "It was small. Just close family." The words hit like a slap. I stared at them, trying to process how they could erase me and my daughter with a single sentence. Close family. As though we weren't. Aftermath. I left the store with nothing but the hollow echo of their voices in my ears. When I got home, Emily was waiting. They saw you, didn't they? She guessed. I nodded. And nothing, I whispered. They said it was just for close family. Emily's hands clenched into fists. Then they've already lost us. Her certainty steadied something inside me, even as my own resolve wavered. Closing of the section. That night, I lay awake long after Emily had drifted off. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, more photos, more posts, more proof of the celebration I wasn't meant to see. But I didn't open them. Instead, I stared at the ceiling, replaying the words over and over. Close family. It was the first time I truly understood. I had spent my entire life fighting to belong to a circle that had drawn itself without me in it. And maybe Emily was right. Maybe it was time to redraw my own. The night stretched on like a heavy curtain that refused to fall. My body was exhausted, but my mind wouldn't quiet. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those photos again, balloons, cake, smiles. And the words close family, echoing like a cruel joke. I turned on my side and glanced at Emily. She was asleep, her chest rising and falling with a steady rhythm, but even in sleep her face looked tense. She had carried too much for someone her age. Too many disappointments. Too many nights watching me break silently at the kitchen table. I promised myself I wouldn't let her carry this one too. But Emily had other plans. The morning shift. When I woke, the house was unusually quiet. For a moment, I thought Emily was still asleep, but when I checked her room, the bed was empty, the blanket tossed aside. A faint murmur reached me from downstairs. I followed the sound, careful, curious, a little uneasy. And then I froze. Emily was sitting at the dining table, phone pressed to her ear, her notebook open in front of her. Her tone was calm but sharp, laced with a confidence I didn't always hear in her voice. Yes, she was saying. I'd like to set up a consultation. It's about a family matter, unfair exclusion. My heart dropped. The interruption. Emily. She turned at the sound of my voice, her expression unreadable. She held up a finger, just a second, then wrapped up the call. Thank you. Tomorrow works. Yes, we'll be there. She ended the call and placed the phone face down on the table. I stared at her. What did you just do? She met my gaze without flinching. I made a call. To who? A lawyer, she said simply. The word slammed into me like a sudden gust of wind. Emily, no. That's not how we handle this. Her eyes narrowed. How else are we supposed to handle it, Mom? They've been walking all over you for years. They don't even see us as family. And now they're trying to erase us completely. A daughter's fury. Her voice trembled with rage, but beneath it was something else, a desperate need to protect me. I could see it in the way her hands shook slightly, in the flush on her cheeks. You deserve better, she continued. I'm tired of watching you get hurt and saying nothing. If you won't stand up for yourself, then I will. I sank into the chair across from her, my own emotions twisting into knots. Emily, honey, I know you mean well. But lawyers? Court? That's serious. And messy. It could make everything worse. Worse than pretending we don't exist, she shot back. Her words landed like stones in my chest. The breaking point. I had no good answer. She was right. The silence, the erasure, the years of being second choice. None of it was better. It was just easier. Easier to swallow the pain quietly than risk more conflict. But Emily wasn't built for quiet suffering. She was fire, where I had been smoke. I've already booked the appointment, she said, softer now. Tomorrow afternoon. Just to talk. Just to see what our options are. Her determination left me stunned. She wasn't asking for permission. She was telling me what was going to happen. And for the first time, I realized maybe I needed that. Preparing for tomorrow. The rest of the day moved in fragments. I washed dishes I didn't remember using. I folded laundry twice. I tried to distract myself with chores, but my mind kept circling back to that phone call. What would we even say to a lawyer? That my parents had left me out of a party? It sounded childish, almost absurd. But it wasn't about the party, and Emily knew it. It was about years of exclusion, about a pattern that had shaped both of our lives. At one point, I found Emily sitting on her bed, typing furiously on her laptop. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Making notes," she replied. "Dates times things they've done. I want to have everything ready." Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her, red at the corners, glistening with unshed tears. She wasn't just making a list. She was reliving every moment of neglect. And that broke me more than anything else. The night before. That night, I tucked myself into bed earlier than usual, but sleep didn't come. My chest felt heavy, my thoughts restless. Emily came in quietly, holding a mug of chamomile tea. "You need to rest, Mom," she said, setting it on the nightstand. I smiled faintly. "Since when did you become the parent?" She sat beside me. "Since you stopped believing you deserved better." Her words lingered long after she left. The appointment. The next afternoon, we drove to a modest office park across town. My palms were sweaty on the steering wheel, my stomach twisting with nerves. Emily sat in the passenger seat, her notebook in her lap, flipping through the pages like a soldier reviewing strategy before battle. When we walked into the law office, the air smelled faintly of coffee and carpet cleaner. A receptionist greeted us warmly, offered water, and led us to a small waiting area. I wanted to turn around, to run back to the safety of silence. But Emily's hand slipped into mine, firm and steady. "It's okay," she whispered. "We're just talking." Meeting the lawyer. We were soon ushered into a small office lined with bookshelves. Behind the desk sat a woman in her early 40s with kind but sharp eyes. She introduced herself as Ms. Parker. "What brings you in today?" she asked, folding her hands. I hesitated, but Emily jumped in. "My grandparents excluded my mom and me from a family event. It wasn't the first time. It's been years of this. And I think it's wrong." Ms. Parker tilted her head. "Family disputes can be complicated. What are you hoping to achieve?" Emily glanced at me, then back at her. "I want my mom to stop being treated like she doesn't matter. I want them to know they can't just erase us." The reality check. Ms. Parker listened patiently as Emily read from her notes, detailing years of neglect, missed birthdays, empty promises. I sat there, half proud and half ashamed, wondering when my daughter had grown strong enough to tell my story better than I could. When she finished, Ms. Parker nodded slowly. "Legally speaking, exclusion from events isn't something we can fight in court. But what you're describing goes deeper. It's emotional harm, it's a pattern of behavior. Sometimes, just having a lawyer reach out can change the dynamic. It shows you're serious about setting boundaries." Emily leaned forward. "So you can send them a letter? Make them understand they can't keep treating her this way." "Yes," Ms. Parker said gently. "I can draft something formal. It won't fix everything, but it might shift the power." A turning point. As the meeting wrapped up, Ms. Parker looked directly at me. "This isn't just about your parents. It's about what you're willing to accept moving forward. Do you want them to keep having this power over you?" Her words hit me like a spotlight. I realized the truth. I had been waiting for my parents to change. But maybe the change had to start with me. When we left the office, Emily squeezed my hand. "See, we have options now." For the first time in a long while, I felt something stirring in me. Not hope exactly, but strength. The kind that comes when you realize you're not standing alone anymore. Closing of the section. That night, Emily spread her notes across the kitchen table, planning next steps, while I brewed us tea. She was still fire, still determined to protect me, but I saw something else in her too, pride. Pride that she had taken action, that she had shifted the story we'd been trapped in for so long. And as I watched her, I realized something profound. Maybe the real victory wasn't in what the lawyer would do, but in the fact that Emily had made the call at all. She had broken the silence I couldn't. She had redrawn the circle for us both. And for the first time, I believed we might actually belong in it. The night air pressed against my skin as Emily and I stood in silence outside the grand, shadowed estate. The world seemed hushed, as if even the crickets sensed something significant was about to unfold. Emily's hand trembled slightly at her side, though her voice, when she finally spoke, carried a calm determination. "Are you ready?" she whispered. I wasn't sure if I was. My chest felt tight, as though the secrets we were about to uncover had already wrapped themselves around me. But I nodded anyway. Let's do this. The path leading to the back of the house was uneven, lined with ivy that seemed determined to claw at our ankles. Each step was heavier than the last, like we were walking into a place that wanted to keep its truths hidden. The house loomed above us, its windows glowing faintly, muffled laughter slipping through the glass. The very sound of it sent a chill down my spine. It was the kind of laughter that wasn't meant for us to hear. Emily's phone buzzed once in her pocket, startling us both. She silenced it quickly, her eyes darting toward the second-story balcony. "We have to move now before someone notices," she murmured. We crept along the back garden until we reached a smaller, nearly forgotten door tucked beneath an overhang. The wood was weathered, its paint peeling in long strips, but the brass handle shone faintly in the dim light, as though someone still used it often. "This is it," Emily breathed, her fingers hovering above the handle. "The door they never wanted us to see." Something about her phrasing made my heart skip. Not just the door, but the door. It was as though the entire weight of our suspicions, our doubts, our heartbreaks, was bound up in this single piece of wood and brass. I placed my hand over hers, steadying the shake in her fingers. Together. The handle turned easier than I expected, no lock to keep us out. As if they had never considered anyone would dare to enter. The hinges creaked softly as the door swung inward, and a wave of warmth, tinged with the heavy scent of cologne and expensive wine, drifted out to meet us. The corridor beyond was narrow and dim, lit only by a single bulb flickering overhead. Our footsteps echoed faintly against the tiled floor, each sound amplifying the thundering beat of my heart. We moved deeper, the air thickening with the sounds of clinking glasses and muffled conversations. The walls were lined with framed photographs, smiling faces, polished celebrations, all perfectly staged. I slowed to glance at one, my breath catching when I recognized him. There he was. The same easy grin. The same arm slung casually around a woman's shoulders. But it wasn't me in that photograph. It was her. Emily noticed my pause, her expression hardening as she looked at the frame. "They made a whole world without us," she muttered, her voice low but steady. We pressed forward, every step pulling us closer to the truth. The corridor eventually opened into a room that hummed with a vibrancy I hadn't expected. Music floated faintly through hidden speakers, mingling with laughter and conversation. Through the sliver of an open doorway, I saw it, the party. It wasn't the kind of gathering where people merely enjoyed themselves. It was deliberate, orchestrated, a performance of loyalty and belonging. Faces I recognized filled the room, their smiles tight, their glances sharp. They were all here, together, and on something larger than we had realized. Emily leaned closer to me, her voice barely audible. "Do you see what this is? They didn't just lie. They excluded us. Completely." Her words settled like ice in my stomach. It wasn't just about being left out of one night. It was about being systematically pushed to the margins, made to believe we were less important, while this hidden world thrived behind closed doors. Suddenly, a sharp laugh rang louder than the rest, pulling my attention to the far side of the room. He was there, standing effortlessly at the center of it all, his posture confident, his charm radiating like a spotlight. He lifted a glass, his voice carrying above the hum of the crowd. "To choices," he toasted. "To the ones who matter most." The room erupted in applause, glasses clinking. My throat tightened as the words cut deeper than any blade. Emily's jaw clenched. "We shouldn't be here," she whispered, though her eyes stayed locked on the scene. But I couldn't move. Not yet. Something inside me needed to see more, to understand the full extent of what had been hidden from us. We slipped into the shadows of the corridor again, edging closer to the doorway for a better view. As I leaned forward, the heel of my shoe scraped lightly against the floor. The sound was small, almost nothing, but in the charged atmosphere, it felt like a thunderclap. Heads turned. Panic surged through me. Emily grabbed my wrist, pulling me back into the dim corridor before anyone could get a clear look. We pressed against the wall, breathless, hearts racing in unison. For a moment, silence stretched between us, broken only by the muffled thrum of the party on the other side of the wall. Then Emily looked at me, her eyes fierce despite the fear in them. We can't unsee this, she said. And we can't pretend it doesn't matter. That door, it changes everything. I nodded, my voice caught in my throat. She was right. That door wasn't just an entryway. It was the threshold to a truth they never wanted us to discover. And now that we had, nothing would ever be the same.